You are listening to Despair by Michael Brockbank, Episode 2. I'm not amused, old man, Darius said, standing to his feet. Give it to me, and I'll let the boy live. His hands began to lengthen as sharp claws protruded from his fingertips. His face began to morph and protrude outward, revealing a row of ever-growing sharp teeth. Gaelun reached into his robes and pulled out the wand Riley had used to decimate the wagon earlier that day. This will be the only thing I give you, creature. The old man thrust out his hand, pointing the wand at Darius. A narrow column of flame shot forth, striking the creature's chest, sending it back into the fireplace. As Darius continued to shapeshift, he found himself unable to break free from the small confines of the fire pit. The partially damp, thick overcoat he wore managed to smother the flames. Billows of steam and smoke began to fill the room as he struggled to free himself from the brick structure. Moving quickly, Gaelun stepped behind Riley, waving his hand. The rug on the floor rolled up neatly across the room, and a hidden trap door opened up. "Get in, lad," he said, throwing a look back at Darius. The creature was beginning to work his way free from the fireplace while howling in anger. "We don't have much time." "I didn't even know this was here," the young man said, rushing to the staircase leading down. "That's the whole idea. It wouldn't be much good of a hiding spot if it were obvious." As Gaelun followed Riley into the cellar, he turned towards the trapdoor. Creating a fist and pulling it to his chest, the door slammed shut against the floor above and flashed for a brief moment. It was a locking spell that could only be undone by someone more powerful than he. "That'll hold him for a moment. Come." The old man pulled the stone from his robes, which lit his pipe, and held it up in front of him. "Illuminatus!" he shouted. The stone illuminated with a light as bright as that of a torch. The room before Riley was vast. Boxes and crates lined the narrow room, along with statues and artifacts that appeared incredibly old. Gaelun moved across the room towards a tall, standing object covered with an old tapestry. He grabbed an old rucksack that was resting on one of the boxes and began filling it with a few things from the room as he walked. Riley followed behind. His mind was a mixture of awe and fear. It was a confusing rush of emotions, and he had no idea what was going on. The last item Gaelun forced into the rucksack was a large, egg-shaped object wrapped in leather. Cinching the sack closed, he forced it into Riley's chest. "Take this." "Why? What's going on?" "No time to—" A vibration at the trap door silenced Galen's explanation. The rapping became louder and louder until finally the floorboards themselves gave way. The trap door and the surrounding wood ripped free and out of sight. A figure slowly began walking down the staircase. The steps slightly echoed throughout the room, but it wasn't the same loud thuds Darius made earlier. This was a much lighter person wearing softer boots. As before, the figure was cloaked in shadow. Not even the light from Galen's stone was strong enough to illuminate this new, darkened figure. A light puff of dust erupted from the figure's boots with every step it took down the staircase. Imagine my surprise when I figured out it was here the whole time. The voice was raspy and sounded unnatural. Riley clutched the rucksack tight with one hand and pulled out his own wand. The young man's wand was a gift from Master Gaelun. It was imbued with a minor spell that could send one bright blue sphere of a magic missile to strike a target. The catch is that it only had a dozen charges left before becoming nothing more than a stick of wood. But it was a very quick and easy weapon to use instead of casting the spell outright. Although nowhere near as powerful as the wand Gaelun was wielding, Riley wasn't about to let his master face this new enemy alone. "Megarius, I thought I smelt your stench on your new pet," Gaelun replied, retrieving his wand. As the gaunt figure made his way close enough to the lightstone, Riley was swept with terror. The figure was that of a man, or at least what resembled a man at one time. His flesh was rotting off his face, unveiling a jawbone on one side. Half of his neck was missing, giving way to see part of the spinal column in the back. It appeared half of the scalp had been removed, and an ear had long been missing from his head. The loud, familiar clump of boots followed behind this deathly figure, half man, half beast. It snarled as it walked up behind the living corpse. "Yes, it was somewhat of an inconvenience when you dispatched my last one," Megarius replied, looking over at Darius, who was now fully changed into a large werewolf. "There's nowhere to go, Gaelun. Hand over the stone." He looked back towards the two standing at the end of the room. A large pair of partially rotten eyes met with Riley's. The young man held out his wand, visibly shaking from watching the ghastly figure before him. There was a long pause. The rain continuing to pelt the cabin was the only sound echoing throughout the room. The storm outside was getting far more powerful as the loud booms of thunder vibrated, various trinkets clinking together upstairs. It was as if both parties were waiting for the other to make a first move. Finally, Gaelun broke the silence. "I'm going to have to decline the offer." He quickly reached behind him to pull the tapestry off the large standing object while muttering a few phrases of an ancient dialect. Riley couldn't quite make it out, but it had something to do with teleportation. It was a finely crafted mirror with an intricately carved solid iron frame with silver trim. Magarius held up both hands and began to mutter something incoherently. Electricity began to jump across his partially decomposed fingers. Gaelun grabbed Riley and pushed him into the mirror, which seemed to bend inward, like being pushed backward into a wall of thick cobwebs. The young man felt himself being pulled in and consumed by darkness as he fell back into the black nothingness. The only thing he could see was the opening to the room as he fell deeper into the mirror's void. As he fell away from his master, Riley watched as a bolt of lightning struck Gaelun, who was holding on to the mirror. The energy seemed to have passed through him and into the piece of furniture, which absorbed most of the power from Magarius' spell. The entire iron and silver frame became charged with electricity as the old man fell to his knees. The darkness Riley experienced immediately illuminated into a swirl of color as electricity streaked around the emptiness. A deafening hum exploded from the void, and Riley lost consciousness. "No!" Magarius shouted, charging for the mirror. With both knees on the floor, Gaelun managed to reach up and grab the decaying leg of his attacker to try to prevent him from following his student into the void. As Magarius fell forward, he reached to brace himself and grabbed hold of the energized mirror frame. The electricity jumped through his body and into Gaelun. Both men became stunned and unable to move willingly. The forward momentum of Magarius pulled both men into the mirror's surface and into the void. The area where the mirror's glass had been began to shimmer and sparkle, and in a vain attempt to rescue his master, Darius got on all four legs and charged the mirror, running at full speed. As the werewolf jumped and made it into the void himself, the mirror's solid glass surface returned. A few sparks of energy from the lightning bolt zipped across the silver trim with a slight crackle, and then all fell silent.